I learned a long time ago that crowded places will tell the truth if you let them. Trains arrive when they arrive, doors snap shut, announcements keep their promises in that flat civic tone. You can measure a city's honesty by how its stations breathe between departures. I like stations for that reason. They remind me of field hospitals, cold light, moving parts, and the small dignities that keep the chaos from making a meal out of you. On the day my wife ran into a stranger's arms, I was standing under a clock at the central platform watching the second hand behave itself. The sound in there was the same as it's always been in every medic tent I've ever worked. Feet, wheels, breath, the negotiated truce between panic and procedure. I'm an EMT now, which means I carry order in a backpack and hope in an IV bag. Before that, I was a medic attached to a special operations team. The team was a family you don't get to keep, and the places we saw were the kind you try to forget by remembering them accurately. I came home with the unglamorous injuries. Knee that clicks when it rains, a shoulder that complains if pride gets involved, a sleep schedule that thinks suns are suggestions. But I also came home with the only luxury that lasts, a refined hatred of lies. You see enough of them in trauma bays and briefings and breakups, and you start to keep receipts. My wife, Elena, made her living polishing other people's narratives. She works in PR, the boutique kind that makes missteps look like brand experiments. When we met, I thought it was funny how her job was to help people tell a better version of themselves, and mine was to stop them from dying in the version they were currently occupying. We worked until we didn't. The distance started like all distances do, with schedules, with fatigue, with the clean lies couples tell when they want to be kinder than accuracy. Then it picked up speed. I learned what all medics eventually learn in their marriages. You cannot save everyone, especially not the person who thinks they're above triage. That day at the station, I was off shift but still in my Navy jacket because uniforms feel like permission to exist in public. I'd come to pick up our son, Owen, from Elena after his week with her. He's 6.5 and newly obsessed with the idea that clouds have shadow friends on the ground. I was early. She texted that she was running late. I watched the clock. Time behaved. People didn't. I saw her before she saw me. Elena has the kind of walk cities listen to, heels saying yes to the floor like a negotiation they've already won. She came down the steps carrying a tote that might have held our son's drawings or a week of decisions she hadn't told me about. She scanned, and when her eyes touched me, they slipped off like water on wax. Then she did something I wish I could say I didn't expect. She ran the last few steps, arms opening, and launched herself into a stranger's chest like he was home from a war she'd invented for herself. He caught her easily. Some men hold women like trophies. Some hold them like lit candles. Some hold them like weapons you don't discharge without intention. He held her like a plan. Their faces went close, not quite kissing, the kind of closeness people calculate when they want to look innocent to cameras, but guilty enough to win a rumor. Around us, the platform decided not to notice. I've been in rooms where a man bled out and the television stayed on because the game wasn't over yet. People are excellent at pretending not to be witnesses. If this were a loud story, I would tell you I rushed them, or that I screamed a word with edges, or that I made a scene like scenes are how you get justice. That's not the story I'm equipped to tell. I did what the job taught me. I took a breath and took inventory. Distance to target, 20 meters. Cameras, 4 visible bubbles in the ceiling, 1 body cam on the transit cop at the far pillar, 2 phones already up in the hands of bored teenagers. Lighting, flat even. Exit routes, 3 obvious, 1 useful. The stranger's hands, open, low, settled, no flinch. Elena's face, controlled, eyebrows raised in faux surprise, eyes flicked past his shoulder, scanning for me. She saw me. She did the weakest, dirtiest thing. She flinched theatrically and tucked her head into the stranger's chest like she was hiding from a threat. People turned. The teenagers' phones angled toward me. The transit cop crabbed a half-step our way. The stranger adjusted his stance, broadening one foot, bracing like a man who wants to look like a wall in other people's video. I could write the caption he hoped for. I could already hear Elena's mother blaming my hours, my temper, my refusal to smile when people lied in nice clothes. I didn't move. I lifted my chin a fraction, and the stranger's eyes met mine over her hair. For a second, my life's two halves, dusty airfields in this sterilized city, overlapped. The world did that thing it does right before a blast. Edges sharpened. In that second, he blinked a code I knew. It was nothing, if you don't speak it. A slow left eyelid, deliberate, like a man fighting sunlight. Then a flick downward, a hitch at the corner, and a relaxation through the jaw that looks like contrition to normal people. To me, stand by, not hostile, eyes on. I went cold and hot at once. The pattern belonged to a man I had not seen since a night we call by coordinates, because names make it heavier. We bled together. We laughed like lunatics at dawn. We lived. The stranger had my friend's face with more years on it, and a beard that made him a rumor. If I had said his name out loud, Mason, everything would have collapsed. So I didn't. Elena pulled back, sniffed for the audience, and performed a whisper loud enough for passers-by to become characters. "He won't stop," she said to the stranger. "He follows me." The stranger, Mason, did not look at me again. He tilted his head toward the transit cop, just enough to invite the authority into the frame. The cop came over with the bored courage public servants wear when they want to get credit for showing up without being asked to work. "Problem here?" the cop asked. Elena used a voice I have heard her use on donors and doubters. It's the voice of a woman who has built a profession out of handing people the version of themselves they're most likely to buy. "He's my ex," she said. "He's angry." She didn't say my name. She didn't have to. The phones wrote it for her. I took my hands out of my jacket pockets and showed them to the freezing air. "We're exchanging custody," I said, even, like a medic ordering supplies. "I'm here for our son. This is new." I let my eyes flick to Mason for half a beat. He had turned his shoulder to the cop to give the appearance of a barrier. He looked bored of me. I caught a glimpse of something metallic beneath the cuff of his jacket. Not a weapon, not jewelry, a camera lens the size of an aspirin. He was wired, or he wanted me to know he was wired. "Sir," the cop said to me, "you should wait over there." He pointed to a square of tile like a naughty corner. I nodded and walked to it. Calm. Because calm is a magic trick you can teach a crowd if you start early. Elena exhaled for the audience and rested her head on Mason's chest. I pretended to check the station schedule and instead counted cameras again. When Owen came into view, held by Elena's sister who looked like a cautionary tale in expensive boots, he saw me and did the thing that saves me from myself daily. He smiled like time was a dog we both owned. I crouched and opened my arms. He ran the last few steps. Elena said my name like a warning, but he was already in the air. And for a second, I was only a father holding his kid in a station that had decided to perform being merciful. "I got you," I said into his ear. "You got me," he said, because he likes repetition more than lies. I stood, nodded at Elena's sister, and didn't look at Mason again. If he really was who I thought he was, he would find me. If he wasn't, I'd find him. Either way, I wasn't doing this on the platform where people eat other people's minutes. In the car, Owen asked if clouds had names. I said of course they did. We just weren't polite enough to ask most days. He said one looked like a big fish. I told him its name was Reginald. He pronounced it wrong and loved it more for the mistake. When you've spent years fixing strangers at high speeds, you learn to build a reaction plan out of boring materials. I got Owen home, fed him 3 chicken nuggets and a banana he declared unethical, and set him up with a documentary about trains narrated by an old British man who sounded like he had invented patience. He lasted 10 minutes before he asked for pancakes and sleep. I carried him down the hall and tucked him into the bed at my place that is smaller than I wish and warmer than it needs to be. I set a glass of water on his dresser because hydration is love, in a form even children recognize. Then I went to my kitchen table and made my list. Lists are how medics keep the dark from getting ambitious. I wrote 1. Station footage. 2. Bodycam request to Transit PD. 3. Counsel, Petra, loop in early. 4. Financials since last quarter. 5. Neighbors' statements, if it comes to that. 6. Do not text Elena. 7. Do not explain to anyone who has not earned the update. 8. Sleep 4 hours. 9. Check Owen's school email for the sign-up about the farm trip. 10. Find Mason or the man wearing his signals. I sent Petra a single-line email. Need to document an incident at Central Station. Possible attempt to create a false narrative. Please call when free. She wrote back in 8 minutes. 9 a.m. Tomorrow. Bring what you have. Do not comment on anything public. If contacted by police, give name and ask for case number. Say you are happy to cooperate with a written statement. I like Petra because she treats panic like soup. Turn down the heat, add structure, stop tasting it every 5 seconds or you'll ruin it. I drafted the request for the station footage, the kind with the legal words in the legal order, and saved it unsent. Then I opened the box under my bed where the better part of my former life sleeps. There are photographs, none flattering, a medal that makes me angrier than proud, a multi-ool my son thinks is a toy, and a patch with the name Cade on it. Mason's patch. I sat on the floor with the box open and tried on the feeling of saying his name out loud and having it be accurate. It fit. At 11:19 p.m., someone knocked 3 times on my door in a pattern that says, "Not a cop," to anyone who knows how cops knock. I looked through the peephole and saw a face that belonged to a man I thought I would only ever see again, in a dream I'd wake up sweating from. I opened the door because some risks aren't. He came in, shut it with his foot, and didn't hug me because we're better at not dying than we are at being affectionate. "You look terrible," I said. He grinned the grin you grow when you've been happy 3 times and survived all of them. "You look domesticated," he said. I meant that as an insult and a compliment. He scanned the room the way men scan rooms when they don't trust luck. Then he held up both hands at shoulder height and let me see the band at his wrist with the tiny camera. "Clean," he said. "Recording since the stairs." "Mason?" I said, just to see if my mouth remembered how to hold it. He touched the patch on his own jacket, a habit he'd never been able to break, even when we were under a kind of fire that didn't appreciate sentiment. "Caleb," he said. My name in the voice of a man who has said it while holding a wound, shut that belonged to me. I got him water because beer makes men lie faster. He didn't drink it right away. He set it on the table, put both palms on either side of it, like he was praying to the god of hydration, and met my eyes. "She used me today," he said. "She thought she did. I let her think so because I need Darren." He said the name like a problem he'd been assigned. "Darren," I repeated, letting it sit on my tongue. He nodded. "Darren Vale. Event guy. Data runner. Thinks NDAs are napkins. He's sloppy in the ways my people hire me to like. Elena's working his accounts. They both think they're smarter than oxygen. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small drive in a plastic bag. Bodycam of the station, and a few days' worth of the version of events Elena and Darren are trying to sell. Why tell me? I asked. He shrugged without moving his shoulders. Because years ago you put your hand on my artery and told me we were going home, and I am in the mood to make good on returns. Because I didn't sign up to be a prop in someone's false call. Because I'd rather you and I write this thing than let the internet do it. And because I have a son I never met, and I'd like the world he might live in to be run by men who can count to 10 before they swing. I laughed without humor. I didn't swing, I said. He smiled. I know. I chose you because you wouldn't. He took a breath that looked like it hurt exactly the right amount. Caleb, I'm under. Not deep, but not clean enough to waltz through a courtroom without muddying your case. We're going to have to be careful. I can provide you the footage and a statement if it goes there. But the goal is not to drag me into her war. The goal is to let her set the trap and then let it close on the right animal. My son, I said. She's not going to succeed at painting me into a corner I don't belong in. He nodded. Then we worked the process. You do the boring things impressively. I'll do the impressive things boringly. Darren will do the stupid thing loudly. We'll be fine. We talked until the water sweated through the glass. He told me about the little ring of people siphoning event data, addresses, dietary habits, donor networks, into a side business that sold information like gossip used to be free. He told me Elena had been paid for consulting, the kind that comes with hotel rooms and ambiguity. He told me he had the first layer of proof. He needed the bigger fish to bite, and they were almost hungry. I used today to anchor a timeline, he said. Public location, visible cameras, my body cam running. If she or Darren spin a stalking story, we can roll the full tape. She initiating, me making contact as a trained de-escalator, you at a distance, the cop, the kid handoff. You looked right at me, I said. The signal. You taught it to me, he said with a grin that made us both 25 again. I just returned a favor. He left at 1:06, after we ran through contingencies the way old soldiers talk about grocery lists. Practically, because practice is religion when faith gets expensive. When the door clicked shut, I sat in the dark and listened to my son breathe through his open bedroom door. The sound was the metronome that keeps my temper from composing its own song. In the morning, I took Owen to school and waved at the teacher who has mastered the art of making 6-year-olds feel like they invented lining up. I drove to Petra's and watched a couple argue politely in the parking lot about whether coffee counted as a breakfast or a strategy. Inside, Petra spread my papers and Mason's drive across her table like a picnic for a god I don't believe in. She watched the station footage twice, her mouth a thin, thoughtful line. She's savvy, Petra said. He's savvier. You're lucky. I'm careful, I said. She nodded. Both can be true. She wrote things down in her neat prosecutor's print and made a list that looked like it belonged taped to the back of my eyelids. We file a preservation letter with the station and transit police. We submit a FOIL request for the footage. We ask for the officer's body cam. We draft a preemptive narrative that does not accuse, only documents. We move your financials into a safer line. And we prepare a temporary order request that prevents Elena from making unilateral claims about custody while there's a dispute about alleged harassment. I didn't harass her, I said, because men who are about to be lied about always say that first. Petra didn't roll her eyes. She nodded at the drive. I know, but the court doesn't know anything until you teach it. We teach judges slowly with paper. Back at my apartment, I printed what Petra told me to print, signed where she drew arrows, and scanned until my machine smelled like warmed plastic. I took a picture of my son's drawing. Me as a stick figure with a backpack and a blue line for "the sky you carry," which is how he explains the way I look when I come home from night shifts. I put it on the fridge with a magnet in the shape of a lemon, because sour foods tell the truth first. Elena texted at 3:11 p.m. "We need to talk." I didn't answer. At 3:14, "Today at the station was unacceptable." At 3:22, "If you keep stalking me, I will get a restraining order and you won't see Owen." I sent the whole screenshot to Petra. She wrote back with a single phrase I knew she would use: "Do not engage. We will engage for you." I went to work a 4 to midnight that felt longer because all the minutes carried double weight. I set IVs into arms and watched fear turn into gratitude by degrees. A man refused transport because he didn't want to be embarrassed in front of his girlfriend. 5 minutes later, he passed out, and I caught the back of his head before it found the curb. He made it. I wrote "no losk" on my chart and wished that losing consciousness were my biggest problem. People always think not remembering is a gift. I have never found that to be true. For 3 days, nothing happened except for all the boring, beautiful things that happen when you commit to paper instead of pyrotechnics. Petra's letters went out. The transit police acknowledged. The station logged the request. Owen learned how to whistle and weaponized it. Elena posted a black and white quote to her feed about protecting your peace, which is what people say when they mean protecting my version. Darren posted a picture from a hotel bar where the lights were designed to make sins look like hobbies. I slept when I could, and when I couldn't, lined up jars on my counter into straight little soldiers until my brain felt like it belonged to me again. On the 4th day, the first twist arrived, wearing a jacket that didn't belong to any of us. A neighbor, Sasha, the kind of woman who can rehang a door by herself and then write a poem about the hinge, knocked to say Elena had been around, asking if I'd been loud lately. "Loud like angry," Sasha said. "Loud like man." I smiled in the way you smile when you choose not to poison your own mouth. "Thanks," I said. "If anyone asks, tell them you hear my blender because a person with a child will make a smoothie at 6 a.m. That's not a crime." She laughed and hugged me lightly, like she understood that some men are fragile when they're trying not to be. That night, Mason texted, "Vale is moving." 9 p.m. Claymore Hotel Bar. He used the name of the hotel that wants to be cooler than the city will ever let it. I replied, "I'm on shift until midnight." He wrote back, "Good, don't show." He likes it when protagonists enter rooms. We'll give him a room with no audience. The next morning, Petra called with a voice that said she had eaten a good breakfast and wanted to feed someone else the truth. "Transit Bodycam came through," she said. "The officer's angle catches Elena's sister handing off Owen and you making space. It also catches a man in a navy jacket, Mason, putting himself between you and Elena in a way a cop would describe as a de-escalation. It's clean. We'll log it, not use it, unless we're forced to." I told her about Darren's hotel habit. She sighed. "There's a spoliation letter drafted for his firm. I'll send it, but he'll ignore it because men like him think letters are suggestions. That's fine. He'll delete something and I'll get to look disappointed in front of a judge. It's a hobby of mine." At noon, I ran into Elena at the pharmacy. She held a small paper bag like a secret. I said hello because I am not a feral man, no matter what story she's auditioning for. She looked at my left shoulder and then my right, a trick she uses when she wants to make a man feel invisible. "You made a scene," she said. "At the station." I let the sentence sit. "You used a stranger," I said. "I didn't know him," she said flatly, daring me to play the game we both hate. Who knows what about whom. I thought about telling her that the stranger's name was Mason Cade, and that he had held my arteries shut with his thumb while I promised him we would both make it home to lives that didn't understand us. I thought about telling her anything that would feel like a punch. Instead, I said, "Owen's parent-teacher conference is Tuesday. We can both go, or you can go and send me notes. Your choice." "You're weaponizing civility," she said, half impressed, half bored. "No," I said, "I'm using it as armor." That night, the second twist came, in a form I should have expected because Elena has always believed props are the shortest distance between a plan and attention. I went down to the car to swap out the trauma bag I keep under the back seat with the one that isn't missing a roll of tape. And there, the way things are placed when people want you to find them, lay a small knife in a plastic sheath. It wasn't mine. It wasn't even the kind I carry. It was too clean, too new, the way lies always are. I stared at it until the part of my brain that is kind to me woke up and said, "Do not touch it." I took pictures. I called Petra. I called the non-emergency line and used the calmest voice I own. An officer came and put on gloves and took the knife into evidence with the resigned expression of a man who knows he is not being paid enough to navigate other people's theater. He asked if anyone had a reason to want me in trouble. I thought about the list and decided to be funny instead of bitter. "Only everybody," I said. He smiled. "Got it." Before he left, he said, "We like it when people call us before things get exciting." I said, "So do I." Mason came by after midnight, looking like a rumor had sat on his chest. He put a hand to his ribs, like something there was disagreeing with oxygen. "You okay?" I asked. He nodded. "Just old ribs complaining about new stupid." He sat at my table, pulled his camera band, and laid it next to the lemon magnet like an offering. "She's accelerating," he said. "Darren's getting sloppy enough to think police are props too. I think they tried to stage you for a violation. If you'd picked up the knife and put it in your car, Elena could have called in a fear complaint. Weapon plus narrative equals headaches. You did good. You called it in. You made it boring." "I'm tired," I said. He smiled without humor. Boredom is the luxury the honest earn. He slid a photo across the table. It was a still from a hotel camera. Darren handing Elena a key card. Her hand was already open. There's a difference between a woman being handed a thing she doesn't want and a woman receiving a thing she asked for. I've spent years reading hands. These were the second kind. "Do you want to burn them down?" Mason asked. He meant legally. He meant with heat measured in subpoenas and affidavits, and the heavy lids of judges who have seen versions of this story told badly. I shook my head. "I want my kid's life unremarkable," I said. "I want the internet bored of me. I want to know that the next time Owen draws the sky, I don't have to hold my breath." "Okay," he said softly. "Then we salt the earth and plant grass." He outlined the next moves. Petra would file for a temporary mutual non-harassment order that did not admit fault but prevented performative accusations. I would install a dash cam that uploaded to the cloud in case props tried to ride shotgun again. Mason would keep meeting Darren where Darren thinks he's charming and wait for the moment when the story about data becomes a story about theft. "We want him nervous," Mason said. "Nervous men tell the truth like a bad magic trick. They show you the card before the reveal." On Saturday, I took Owen to a birthday party where a clown did balloon animals with the existential fatigue of a man who once wanted to be a poet. Elena showed up late, wore sunglasses inside, and hugged the birthday mom like they had survived something together. She didn't talk to me. I didn't seek it. I helped cut cake and passed plates and kept a kid from eating a candle, which is the sort of heroism that never makes the news, but should. Owen asked if I could do sirens on the way home, which is what he calls listening to the radio loud enough to make the street seem like it's on our side. I told him no, because my head was a glass jar full of bees. He said okay, like the kind of little man I am trying to raise. And then he made his own siren sounds with his mouth, and I forgave the world everything for 9 seconds. On Monday, Petra called with glee disguised as professionalism. Transit PD released the full platform footage, she said. And there's a nice little thing in there I think you'll enjoy. She sent me the clip. At the 0037 mark, Elena's face tilts just enough that you can see her eyes check the ceiling for cameras. At 0041, she angles her body so the lens catches my profile and her protectively leaning into the stranger. At 0049, the stranger, Mason, says something we can't hear, and she glances at the transit cop. The beats are too crisp, too rehearsed. It looks like a training video assembled by someone who never trained a day in her life. We won't go public, Petra said. But if she files anything, we slip this into the packet and hum a little tune about context. Meanwhile, I want you to come to the office tomorrow afternoon. Bring Owen if you need to. We have crayons. I laughed. He'll just reorganize your pens by how friendly their caps look. She said, he's hired? That night, I drove a late run past the Claymore, because medics like to know where the exits are even when they're off the clock. I parked across the street and watched men in shoes that made them taller enter and leave. I saw Darren on the sidewalk feeding a cigarette to the air. A woman touched his arm and he smiled like a man who has never been told no by a door. Mason walked past him without looking, wearing a hat pulled low in a way he hates. He disappeared into the glowing lobby like a man who belongs everywhere he needs to. By Friday, the third twist came, the one I didn't see coming, even though it had been waiting in our house for months. Elena's mother called a family dinner and said in the kind of voice that gets RSVP'd by fear that my attendance was expected. I asked Petra if I should go. She said, if you can stomach it. Family rooms make judges nervous. Keep your notes. Don't accept gifts. Don't accept drinks you didn't pour. I laughed, then realized she wasn't joking. And take someone, she added. You need a witness that isn't a person who shares your last name. Mason said he'd be nearby if I needed a fire extinguisher. I can't be there, he said. But I can be across the street holding a camera that acts like an alibi if the room grows teeth. I told him I didn't want to involve him more. He said, Buddy, I'm already as involved as a person can be without wearing a name tag. The dinner was at Elena's mother's house, a place where every chair has a cousin who can tell you who sat in it and what they said. The table was set with plates that had seen more tragedies than triumphs and pretended not to mind. Elena was already there, hair perfect, wearing the sweater she thinks makes her look like a person with empathy. Her sister behaved like an extra who might land a line. Elena's mother moved in the kitchen like guilt had bitten her, and she didn't want anyone to see the teeth marks. We ate through the salad like it was an exam. Then, Elena placed her napkin next to her plate with the same precision she'd used at the platform and said, Caleb, you can end this. We can agree to a new story and stop making everyone miserable. She looked at me the way you look at a man you think you've almost convinced. You can say you were angry and that you're sorry, and we can move forward without courts. I'm not angry, I said. I've been angry. This isn't it. I'm busy. I'm a father. And the court is a building where paper lives. I like paper. Elena's mother reached for my hand like religion. He's a good man, she said, meaning Noah, a name that belonged to another woman's story. I laughed out loud before I could stop it. She flushed. I mean, she said, Caleb, you know I've always liked you. But my daughter needs peace. She needs honesty, I said. Those two do not have to be enemies. Then Darren walked in without knocking. He carried a bottle of something expensive and a grin he thought was disarming. Heard we were doing reconciliation, he said like a talk show host. Mason texted me. On porch cam, I replied. Across the street, he wrote, always. Darren put the bottle down and looked around the room like it owed him applause. We could do this like adults, he said. Clean, private. No need to drag anyone's day job into this, right, Elena? He smirked at her. Elena looked at me like she wished he were better at subtlety. Adults, I said. Great, then let's speak like them. I took a small folder out of my jacket and laid it on the table. This is a request for you, Elena, to sign a mutual non-harassment agreement. It says we won't make public statements about each other that would prejudice custody. It says we won't show up at each other's homes or places of work without invitation. It says we will communicate about Owen through the app Petra gave us, so the record is clean. It's boring. It'll feel like homework. It will keep everyone honest. Darren laughed. Or, he said, you could drop whatever it is your lawyer's cooking and accept that you lost. Your ex-wife has a life. You can have an allowance with it. That's modern. He leaned back, satisfied with his version of magnanimity. I have done CPR on men who deserved it and on men who did not. I have listened to the ribs crack and kept going. I have not often wanted to stop. In that moment, I wanted to stop being a person who keeps his hands where they do the least harm. I looked at Elena instead of Darren. Is this our plan? I asked. A conversation with your business partner in your mother's dining room? She hesitated for half a breath too long. People give themselves away in the spaces they don't fill. Darren is just here to support me, she said. He cares about me. The sentence landed like a knife someone forgot to drop the moment they grabbed it. I stood. I'm going to step outside, I said. I need air. Elena's mother looked relieved, as if oxygen might do miracles for men who refuse to accept their lines. On the porch, the camera over the door stared at me with its unblinking little eye. Across the street, a man with a hat he didn't like lifted his chin once, the code for yes. My phone buzzed. A text from Mason. He brought a drive. You want it? I typed. Only if we're clean. He replied, Clean is my middle name, which is untrue, but he's earned the right to joke when a situation has 3 exits and 2 of them are terrible. We didn't need to steal anything. Darren offered it. Back inside, he launched into a speech about how he and Elena were going to control the optics, about how a false narrative of stalking was unfortunate, but also understandable in today's climate, and how cleaning it up would require a certain donor confidentiality. He said those phrases like a man reading from a script he thought nobody recognized. Petra has taught me to love men who confess in paragraphs. He pulled the drive out to show off a presentation. Elena winced so slightly it would not have registered if my job weren't to notice tiny hypertensions in human beings. He put the drive next to his glass, and when he went to the bathroom to look at himself in a mirror he slept with, Elena reached to slide it into her bag. Don't, I said, not loud. Just the word you use when a child's about to touch a pan she doesn't believe is hot. She froze. Her mother stared at the tablecloth like it might be able to give her different daughters. Darren came back wiping imaginary water off his hands. Ready to be reasonable? He asked the room. Elena looked at him for the length of one of our son's soft snores and said, "No." I didn't smile. I didn't do anything but breathe. There, in a dining room arranged to make me look like the unreasonable man who couldn't accept losing a woman to a narrative. Elena stepped off the stage she had built. "No," she said again, looking at me this time. "I won't sign anything tonight. But I won't lie either." She pushed the drive toward me. "Take it," she said. Darren laughed like he owned gravity. "What, you think that proves something?" he asked. "I don't need it to prove anything," I said. "I need it to exist." I picked it up and put it in my pocket like I was putting a receipt somewhere safe. Darren reached for it. I lifted my hand. "Please," I said, "let's keep this boring." Mason's text landed as punctuation. Got what I needed. Veil transfer flagged. I wrote back, "Be careful." He sent a thumbs up, which is code for shutting up now. The next week was paperwork and quiet. Petra filed motions that looked like shaking hands in a world where people have learned to wield fingers like knives. The transit cop's bodycam, the station's footage, Mason's angle, none of it was used. It all sat in a folder labeled with my name and the word context. Elena signed the app agreement and stopped texting threats. She did not apologize. That is not a requirement for sanity. We kept passing Owen back and forth like a precious thing we actually both valued. He asked less about clouds and more about why some adults talk to each other like they're trying to trick a mirror. I told him we were practicing. He said, "Practice is boring." I said, "Yes." And he looked up at me with eyes that don't yet know how to lie and said, "Good." I would like to tell you that the final twist was cinematic. It was not. It was quieter than I deserved. Mason's case landed, not with a raid, not with a headline, but with a summons and an audit. Darren swore at a receptionist and then at a judge. The judge did not respond to either, because paper teaches men better than people can. Elena moved to a smaller apartment with better light. My apartment acquired plants that didn't die. Owen learned to read out loud, and he chose the worst parts of the day to demonstrate. When the first court date rolled around for our custody arrangement, Elena's lawyer tried to bring up concerns about Caleb's temper. Petra slid the station footage across the table like a cheese board and said, "We have perspective if the court wants it." The lawyer decided the court did not. The judge reminded us that children are not coins in a narrative slot machine. We nodded like people who had read the manual and decided to operate the machine as intended. That night, I walked to the station and stood under the clock. The second hand obeyed the rules. People did not. A woman ran to a man and jumped, and nobody took a video because they were too busy being late. I breathed and let the noise sort itself into sounds that meant nothing about me. Then my phone buzzed with a picture. Owen in a cape, on Elena's couch, reading to a stuffed bear who did not agree with the plot. Elena had taken the picture. She had written, "He says the bear is nervous about the farmer." I wrote back, "Tell him the bear can take a break whenever he wants." She sent back, "Copy." Later, Mason came by with 2 beers, and the news that he was going to disappear for a while because disappearing is how he stays alive. He stood in my doorway and looked at the ceiling like a man who has known falling things. "You did good," he said. "You didn't give them a movie. You gave them minutes." I said, "I hate minutes." He said, "I know. Me too." We stood there not hugging until the moment passed, and men who are bad at affection could go back to pretending they are not. He knocked his knuckles on the door frame like a salute and left. I shut the door and leaned against it. feeling the weight of wood and habit, and whatever part of me had been waiting for something loud to rescue me from something quiet. The quiet had done the rescuing. I went to check on my son even though he wasn't there, and the room was just a bed and a line of cars he'd parked like a man who believes traffic can be orderly. I turned off the light, and the dark behaved itself. After months of acting like a person who liked paperwork, I realized the truth. I do. It is the one room where heat doesn't lie. You can see the steps and take them and know you're not mistaking motion for progress. That, to me, is the only revenge worth keeping, the kind you can teach a kid without apologizing. I tucked the clippings and the printouts and the little drive into a folder and wrote on the tab with a black marker that will outlast my best intentions. This is how we remember the truth. Some nights, on post-midnight runs, I end up back at the station because my rig and the city have an old argument about fate. I watch the trains arrive and leave. I watch people find the arms they're looking for and the ones they're trying to borrow. I watch a transit cop help a man figure out how to work a ticket machine without making him feel like a punchline. I check the time. I let it do its job. And I think of a man on a platform who blinked a code into a crowded room and told me to stand by, eyes on, not hostile. He was right. When Elena and I talk now, it is through an app that stamps our sentences with a date like schoolwork. It makes us careful. It is the kind of artificial that makes honesty easier, like writing your own vows from prompts. We don't discuss Mason or Darren or knives. We talk about library books and lunchboxes and the fact that Owen hates raisins passionately and philosophically. Some days, when I'm tempted to fictionalize my life for the sake of a feeling, I open the app and write a sentence about soccer cleats. The sentence keeps me alive. I used to think life and death made you a certain kind of interesting. I know better now. The most exciting thing I did this month was convince my son that cleaning up Legos is like an extraction. Precision, timing, each man accounted for. He believed me because he loves me, because I do the dishes every night, even when I don't want to. Heroism is a sink. One Saturday, on my way to a late shift, I passed the station and saw a woman run into a man's arms and knew, even at a distance, even with the light unflattering and the cameras bored, that this time it was real. The way he caught her had no plan in it. It was messy and honest and ugly with relief. I wanted to clap for nobody and everybody. Instead, I went to work. I checked the IV kits. I signed the log. I told a rookie that the trick to not getting blood on your shoes is to love your shoes less than you love the work. He said, "Copy." And we both pretended that would be enough. In the end, the stranger wasn't a stranger, and the arms weren't a harbor, and the revenge wasn't a fire. It was a ledger balanced in daylight. It was a file that says, my son will always be able to read the story of what happened to us and not taste smoke. It was a man I loved, like a brother stepping out of a crowd to help me avoid the kind of war that convinces a man he needs one. That's all. It's enough. It's everything. Weeks later, Owen asked me, "Did you ever have a friend you went into the scary place with?" I said yes. He said, "Do I know him?" I said, "You saw him once at the station. He helped me be brave by being boring." He nodded, satisfied in the way children are when the world doesn't put on a show for them. "Reginald has a shadow," he said, pointing out the window at a cloud that was pretending to be a whale. "We all do," I said. "Ours just learned to walk in step." The day the papers came through final, the custody agreement settled, the restraining order unnecessary, the finances placed in boxes that would not leak. I took Owen out for pancakes. He asked if he could pour the syrup himself. I said yes and watched him make a mess less than I feared. "We're good," he said, mouth full. "We are," I said. He asked if clouds ever get tired. I told him they don't, because they don't have to carry themselves. He said, "Lucky," and I agreed. After breakfast, we walked to the station because he wanted to hear the announcements. We stood under the clock and let time do what it does. A train came. It left. A woman ran. A man caught her. A cop looked bored and wonderful. A janitor made the floor shine like a decision. My son held my hand like we were on a bridge, and he trusted my math. It turns out I did too. If you're still waiting for the part where I become spectacular, you missed it. It already happened, a long time ago, in a place loud enough to disguise anything. I decided to stop being interesting. I became reliable. People don't write movies about that. They write children who sleep through the night. They write men who don't take the knife out of the sheath and put it where someone else wants it. They write women who decide not to lie for a man who brought gifts no court could respect. They write a station that does its job. They write this, a boring, beautiful revenge that leaves nobody bleeding on the floor. If that's not enough for you, I hope you never need the kind that is. In the quiet that followed, life took on the shape of hours I couldn't have kept alive during the storm. I learned the names of Owen's classmates the way a medic learns street grids. Not to impress anyone, just to be faster when it mattered. I kept a notebook in the rig for the little things that prove a day happened for a reason. Mrs. Patel's laugh when the gurney wheel stuck and we all pretended it was a joke. The way a man in withdrawal said "please" before he vomited, like courtesy might calm his body. The exact color the sky turns at 5:43 in October, when a sun decides to be kind. I put those things in ink because memory is an honest liar. It rearranges furniture while you sleep. Elena and I found a rhythm like two people walking parallel streets headed to the same park. She stopped posting quotes. She started sending photos of Owen's homework with little circles around the parts he got right instead of arrows at what was wrong. The first time she told me I was doing a good job, it was about a lunch I packed that used the right container for the yogurt. I took the win and put it in the drawer with my passport and the drive Mason gave me. You keep the essentials in one place when you want your future to be easy to find. Mason wrote once from an airport where the language on the gate didn't use vowels the way mine does. He said, "Tell the kid the cloud's name today is Penelope." I told Owen, and for a week, every shape in the sky was a Penelope pretending to be something else. He asked me if Penelope could be a train. I said yes. He said, "Trains don't fly." I said, "Everything flies if you throw it hard enough." He laughed like men who love their fathers, but know better than to believe their hyperbole. The last time I saw Darren, it was on the back page of a business section that gets used to catch paint in apartments that are becoming other people's dreams. He wasn't in handcuffs. He was in a suit, looking like a warning. The article said words like settlement and agreed to oversight, and privacy concerns. It did not say sorry. Newspapers don't print that in any font I can find. It was enough. Paper had once again done what rage promises and can't deliver. It moved a man without lighting a match. There's a stray cat behind the station that pretends not to know me. I bring it water and it ignores me dutifully, which is how I prefer my affections reciprocated these days. One night, after a run that tasted like metal and relief, I sat on the curb near the cat and thought about the stranger's arms my wife jumped into, and the old arms that caught me in places where catching a man can get you killed. I thought about all the rooms where people perform being saved, and I thought about the one room I want to keep sacred, the one under the clatter and the announcements, where my son's hand finds mine because it has always been there, boring and warm. On the anniversary of the platform, Owen and I went back to the station and bought a hot chocolate to share. because sweetness goes farther when it travels with a witness. He blew on it like a miniature old man, solemn, then handed it to me with both hands to make sure I didn't spill. "You remember when Mom ran to that man?" he asked, out of nowhere, the way children steal your breath when they time their questions to your heartbeat. I didn't lie. "I remember," I said. He looked at the tracks like they were a ruled notebook. "Was he bad?" he asked. I said, "No, he was a friend. He helped us tell the truth." Owen nodded like a judge accepting a plea. "Okay," he said. Then he said, "Penelope is late," pointing at a cloud that was doing its best impression of anything else. We waited. She showed. She almost always does. If you want neat endings, you don't want mine. We don't reconcile at a diner with pancakes the size of regrets. We don't marry new people who love us better because they are new. We don't post photos that prove we won. We buy the right containers for yogurt. We sign the paper that says this is what we'll do when we're tired and mean. We wave across a field because our kid asked if both of us could come to the soccer game, and we look at the grass instead of each other when the whistle blows. We teach the bear to take breaks. I tell Owen that revenge is a story word, and that real life has better nouns: boundary, record, routine, receipt, handrail. I show him my folder with a tab that says what happened in an alphabet he is just learning. "Why do you keep it?" he asks. "Because the world forgets," I say, "and because one day you might ask a question I can only answer with paper." He says, "Will I like the answer?" I say, "You'll like that it's true." On the walk home from the station, an old man was arguing with a young man about whose turn it was to hold the door. Both of them were right, and both of them were ridiculous. I held the door because medics hold doors. It's in a manual somewhere. They walked through, each claiming they didn't need me. That is as happy as I get these days, unnecessary and useful in the same minute. At bedtime, Owen asked me to tell a story from When You Carried the Sky. I told him about a friend who blinked once in a crowd, and in that single blink delivered a message no language could hold. He fell asleep before the ending. I didn't finish it in my head, because some endings are for nobody. I turned off the light and stood in the dark and let the room be honest with me. It said, in its quiet room voice, "You did not burn. You built. You waited. You served the truth under nothing but air, and the truth arrived on time, like a train that knows who it's carrying and intends to get them there. In the morning, the city will open its mouth again and make the noises it makes when it remembers to be kind. I will put on my jacket that smells like other people's bad days and go out to meet them. I will carry the sky as far as my shoulder will allow. I will bring home the minutes and feed them to the boy who will make a better man out of them than I did. And somewhere, a stranger who wasn't will sit in a room with no windows and count his breaths like a man who understands that the boring ones are what keep you alive. I hope he counts to 10. I hope he counts forever.